universal thing.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you for this opportunity to come talk with you all. As Seal mentioned, I just started on August 5th, and this is actually my second public talk. So bear with me, and I'm really excited for you all, and the questions that you ask later will help inform the presentation moving forward. And with that, there are copies on your table of two documents, one of which is a budget study by George Washington University around federal program funds that are allocated based on the census, as well as what I'm going to go through PowerPoint. So apologies, it's not up on the screen. Okay. Some of this, many of you already know this. This is mandated, the census is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. This is the largest peacetime operation our country embarks upon. So it's a major, major initiative. And as I already mentioned, there's federal funding that's allocated based on the census count, as well as it determines our congressional representation, how many congressional seats that we have in office. So a very, very important determining factor of how our voice is heard in Washington, D.C. So the budget information that I have on your table, just generally, we expect to have around 10 million people as a population estimate here in Michigan. So it's about $3,000 a person that's at stake for this census. So it's really, really important. These programs, the money that comes in, infrastructure, nutrition programs through DHHS, Head Start programs, it really covers the gamut in terms of some really important programs that you see in your community. So continuing on, a little bit about my role as the executive director of the state census. There's a lot of people that like to joke that have I been practicing my counting, am I prepared for this? But it's important to note the U.S. Census Bureau actually does the counting. My role, as well as the state committee the governor has appointed, there's 60 members on that committee that she has appointed, and we're here to help promote awareness around the census. Also help drive communications and outreach and mobilize state government to be supportive of census efforts. So just wanted to note that. And we, again, Seal, as you mentioned, very early in my tenure here, we just had our first state complete count committee last week on the 4th. So some of the information I'll be presenting today has been communicated with them, but it hasn't been formally adopted yet because we actually ran out of time at the meeting. So such is life, right? It happens. Let's see what else. So one of the pieces, just to give you a sense, our mission that we are looking at, mobilize Michigan to tell our story of growth and economic opportunity through the 2020 census, ensure that Michiganders maximize their voice in congressional representation and obtain our fair share in federal resources by encouraging the full participation of all individuals in the state of Michigan. Our goal, we want a complete count. We want everyone that lives here, every person, to be counted in this census. And to give you a little sense, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later in the presentation, but I put out to the committee as a goal to consider that we look to do an 82% self-response rate. So what does that mean? Self-response rate, right? And so this is a slide that should be in here, but I didn't put it in, so I've already learned a lesson. The timeline for the census this year is, and they're doing some things differently that you may or may not have heard about. In March, the online form where you can fill out the census, the online form goes live in March. You will receive 4 mailings from the U.S. Census Bureau. The first 3 will direct you to that online form to fill out the census, or you can fill out by phone as well. And that if you've been non-responsive after those 3 mailings, you will get a mailed form to you, okay? So that's that 4th mailing. You get an actual census form, paper, mailed to you. Now, if you are still non-responsive by the end of April, that's when the canvassing, the enumerators from the U.S. Census Bureau comes out to knock on your door and have you fill out the census. So that's a little bit about the process. They continue going door to door through the end of July, and then that's it. And then they will calculate final results and present to the president December 31st of 2020. Okay, so that's a little bit about the process. Feel free, question. I was like...
So the form that gets mailed to the address,
correct,
to the individual?
Correct.
Just repeat the question.
Yeah, sorry. So the form will get mailed to the address, not the individual. That was the question. And the answer is yes. So the U.S. Census Bureau has a master address file that they've built, and that is what they will base their outreach around the census on. So right now they're canvassing communities around the state because there's new construction and they want to make sure that they adopt those addresses. Now, one of the unique things that I found out coming into this job is the U.S. Census Bureau doesn't actually share their master file with us. We help build it with them. Our state demographer has been very plugged in and working on this, and one of the baseline data sets that we've taken from the state is the Michigan Secretary of State's office, their file on addresses in the state. But they also do, and I joke around about this. I don't think they actually send drones out, but I'm like, do they send drones out to confirm addresses? But not to be too paranoid. But anyway, so yes, we get another question.
How do you reach out to homeless people?
Great question. So this is, how do you reach out to homeless people? So one of the major partners in the state effort is the Michigan Nonprofit Association. And they have 13 hubs around the state that are issuing mini grants to some of those key nonprofit entities to work in their community. So that's one way. 2 is the U.S. Census Bureau actually focuses a week on counting the homeless communities around the state. So it's a focused effort that they come in and do that counting. So I'm in conversations with them to figure out, for them to let me know when that week is so we can make sure it's all hands on deck, that we inform the community to be prepared to be counted on that week. So got more questions. I didn't even get through the presentation. No, it's okay. Go ahead.
What about snowbirds? How should they respond?
Well, this is a very tricky question. So the U.S. Census Bureau says, wherever you lay your head on April 1st is where you should submit your form. I think broadly speaking, they want you to fill out where you spend most of your year. So this is one thing that I've been thinking about, that because I know a number of people like to head south, that if there is a way to communicate with them while they are maybe somewhere south for the winter, that they can still fill out with if they spend 3/4 of the year in Michigan. And I would encourage them to do that because I want to get to 10 million. So
Wow.
Go ahead.
Wouldn't it be wise to look at where they're registered to vote?
Their primary residence.
Yeah, registered to vote, but again, it's even beyond that too, because there's non-registered people that we still need counted too. So that's just one piece of the equation.
So that's their determination that it's April 1st.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. That's part of the Constitution. It says April 1st.
That's what I mean.
Right.
There.
It is written
Big
in
there.
the law.
That's National Census Day, but you keep counting through July if you're non-responsive. So. Yes.
Getting back to homeless people,
Yes.
the state already has a huge database called HARA.
Uh-huh.
And the city of Lansing is the one who dispenses all the HUD money to serve the homeless people, so they'll know who's on that.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation, and that's a great representation of some of the tools the state of Michigan has that we can put to work. I think another one is license our list for nursing homes, because those two U.S. Census workers will come out and do an interview with folks that are in assisted living or that type of situation. So that's another thing I would say. The biggest thing I'm worried about from the state is you have the U.S. Census Bureau that's responsible for things and should be doing this, right, with these group homes as an example. And I'm trying to connect the dots to ensure if I have addresses from a nursing facility, we'll say on that theme, I want to make sure the U.S. Census Bureau has someone assigned to that facility and they will be counted. That's the kind of level of kind of details I want to work through. So, go ahead.
In the past, when it was a form, everyone in a household was included on one form. Being online, are we still supposed to report the household, or would it be each person in the household needs to fill it out?
It's still household. I have no idea what the form will actually look like. They haven't revealed that, the U.S. Census Bureau. I've only seen the form that they've tested in Rhode Island. So it's like 9 or 10 questions. It's really brief. It will be quick. But then you need to put everyone's name in the household, and that's one piece I'd like to highlight. A lot of times kids under 5 don't get counted because I think their parents, may forget, to include them because they're young, and I don't know. But I can't imagine forgetting my 2-year-old because he's always in my face. But at any rate, other questions? Sure.
Following that, if you have a person that is legally here in the States and they're temporarily staying with you, come April, does that person have to be listed in the household as part of the, if they're not part of the family and they're
Yeah, anyone that's living at your address.
at that?
It's an unrelated household person in your house. That's how it's defined. It's an unrelated person in your house. And there's a place to check that.
Yeah.
At least it has.
And if they have an address somewhere else, though, it's their home address, but they're not going to be there, they're going to be probably living.
If they're living at your address for a majority of the year, they should be counted on your form.
You're not necessarily, okay, so.
Yeah. That's the bar I would use. Yes.
What if you fill out the form and then realize you made a mistake? Is there a correction mechanism?
It's a good. I don't. So this is. Go ahead.
No, repeat it.
Oh.
Sorry, Karen.
We need more microphones.
Yes. Next time.
So if you make if you realize you make a mistake on the form, is there a way to correct it? So, I haven't looked at that question specifically. One of the pieces, if as we've mentioned, since you can fill it out online, there may be a way you may fill it out a couple of times. That's a potential risk, and the U.S. Census Bureau would track that data and come back to you and clarify what is the appropriate information. So I haven't heard of anyone retracting their information that they send. So I have to look into that with the U.S. Census Bureau. Yes, ma'am.
Would you like to finish your presentation?
I can't. Some of it we've touched on, but I can cruise through it really quickly and get back to questions. So it's a really important issue. So we talked a little bit about the timeline, and just back again to the state charge, and what I'm working with the 60-member committee is we're probably going to break into work groups. So I list those out by constituency and then area of work. I think another important piece to recognize, which I may have skipped over, is hard to count communities of color, kids under the age of 5. We have a huge digital divide here in Michigan, meaning like I think it's 24% that don't have broadband access in the county that they reside in. And so since this is the first year where the forum is online, it's definitely a big concern of how we can do community outreach there. So a lot of those work committees, again, is a work in progress that we're going to be organizing around. I've touched on this to operations in Michigan. So we have the U.S. Census Bureau. They have staff around the state. They used to work within 13 regions in Michigan. Because of reductions of the U.S. Census Bureau, they're down to 6 regions. Okay. I have heard different things from the Census Bureau, but I just mentioned that with their Canvas operation, I've heard that they've cut 6 door knocks down to 3 during the enumeration period. Okay, so that's less passes at those doors that are non-responsive. So that's also troubling. Okay. So you have the U.S. Census Bureau, and then they'll also do broad-based communications as well. So that's what you can expect for them and their outreach. We're talking about the state government and the complete count committees. I think, as I mentioned, we have a state complete count committee that the governor has appointed. But guess what? There's local complete count committees all over the state. So I know City of Lansing has a complete count committee. East Lansing has a complete count committee. I heard the county was organizing one as well. Others in this room may be aware of other local complete count committees. So just imagine. So you have, and then the last prong here is the Michigan Nonprofit Association, where I mentioned they have 13 hubs in the state. Okay, so you have the nonprofit engagement, you have the U.S. Census Bureau work, and then you have the local complete count committees that are in theory led by the highest elected official in that area. And I'm looking, what I'm trying to research right now is how the state complete count committee and our work can ensure that we're bridging the gap between each of those entities, because I get really nervous that we're going to lose some efficiency, and there's ways that we can, there's synergy and traffic cop, if you're going to have a media event, it shouldn't be scheduled on the same day, so we should be talking and coordinating on a regional level, as well as I'm trying to figure out how we can bolster resources into local communities. Referencing the Michigan Nonprofit Association is running about a $10 million operation, half of which has been allocated by the state, and then we're looking at, pulling together additional funds to run this campaign, essentially. So that's just additional background in terms of operations in the state. Just to touch on mobilizing state government. Some of the things I'm working department by department on, the Secretary of State's office. So they have a mobile Secretary of State unit that the Secretary of State has been committed to moving that around the state to key areas to promote census and filling out your census form and education. So, and keep in mind, we need those, maybe internet resources or what have you that they can provide in a mobile unit. Also, their offices as well, kiosks and while you're waiting is another thing. Hopefully, we're not quite to the 30-minute wait yet, but that's just another resource that folks can go if they can't get online at home, and they can go into their Secretary of State's office. Same with DHHS offices, right. All around the state. We want to work with the local complete count committees to say, hey, where do you need a location? Where can we help supply some infrastructure to support your outreach into your community? And the list goes on, because obviously the state engages with the public in a lot of different ways, whether that's through the website or and beyond, through different programs, etc. So we want it to be everywhere. So, and then the last thing, I guess I had mentioned before I go into some of the context around the population that we know about thus far is, we too are working with the business community, and I know most easily, we want them to put census information in their bills. But then, of course, I've also been informed no one pays their bills through the mail anymore. It's automatic paid or through your credit union or bank. So that has been a flag. Okay, I want to make sure I'm working with the banks and the credit unions to have census information on their interface. So, wherever you go, the theory is you're going to be seeing why it's important to fill out your census forms. So I'll pause and then I have the population slides I can go over real quickly.
Will the census forms be available in other languages?
Yes. And so there will be, I'm gonna forget how many, there's like 59 different languages that they are supplying support for between online and then also phone support as well. But I think that's another example where we want to make sure, because they cut, this is a U.S. Census Bureau cut, they usually have U.S. question and answer centers in the community, and that has been kind of a cut that the department has made. So the local complete count committees, and I agree that we need to figure out how we provide that resource in the communities. Yes, ma'am.
I have two questions. The first question is, what about the libraries?
Yes, we want, yeah.
You've got connections in with those?
Yes, the State of Michigan Library, they already have like a census website up, and then we'll be working with them.
Those public libraries have internet access for their folks, so that helps with that. The other question was, how is the U.S. Census organized to interact with us in terms of giving us feedback as how we're doing in terms of...
Oh, that's great. I'm so glad you asked that.
Repeat that question. Because you can have the first day it's open, right? And then it's going to be every so many weeks after that. They're going to know how close they are to filling their original database.
Yeah, so the question is, what is the U.S. Census Bureau going to tell us how things are going when the census starts, essentially?
Yeah.
So word is from the Census Bureau that they're going to give us real-time updates by track as the census starts.
Okay. Each track is a state?
Each track is its own boundary that is different than your precinct. So what we are doing at the state is we have a draft, it's not out yet, for our website that we will have the state of Michigan with track information but overlaid with precincts as well as state legislative seats and congressional seats, so then you can have that information as well.
And so local organizations can use that to...
Yeah, it'll be a public-facing site, and in theory, my hope is that, we have folks engaged between the local complete count committees and the M&A hubs, and that it becomes a reference tool that the state is providing that you all can review your operations. Marty?
What if, hypothetically, there is a resident who is undocumented, and maybe the children in the family are citizens by virtue of their birth here?
Yeah.
What is the obligation of that resident to fill out the census, and at what personal risk does one do so?
Yeah, so...
repeat that?
Yes, repeat the question. So essentially, what is the risk if there's an undocumented person that has kids in the household that are citizens? What risk is it to that undocumented person? So your census information is confidential. It's secure and confidential and not revealed till 70 years later. That's the law. People go to jail if employees transfer that information in any way. So there's every reason that we should feel safe about filling out the citizenship, or that doesn't exist too much, the census form. Now, I can see by face, I feel the same way. I'm I'm just being honest. But I think one of the important roles that we have to help provide is understand the law, understand that there's going to be people that are going to fight. You know, if anything happens to our information or gets flagged in any way, you know, that's from our Attorney General is ready to, you know, I was just at an event with former Attorney General Eric Holder and some of his work, that this is something that's very much on their radar screen. And I think it's really important that, you know, we have every safeguard possible that's written in law, and we need to do our best to protect the integrity of the system and help people understand that and to fill out their census form. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm that undocumented person, and I have 3 grandchildren living in my house. How would they track whether I'm a citizen or not? Just based on the census information.
Yeah,
Citizenship has
There's
never been asked.
Right, it's not.
it's not a question this year. I think where it comes from is, as I think many of us are seeing, that there's a general fear in terms of, you know, what could happen with the ICE raids, and let's be honest too. There's also people that hate government. Okay, they don't even like paying taxes, let alone filling out a census form. So there's a lot of distrust and not wanting to do or fill out the census form. But there's some real, like, our committee is bipartisan. I was talking to Senator Stamas, and he used the line. He goes, "If you're gonna have to pay taxes, you'll want it coming back into your community." And I said, "Yes, sir." So, you know, I just think we have to do what we can to safeguard the integrity of the process. We have people that will have our back on that, promote, you know, folks filling out the census, and then also arguing with those that, you know, don't want to just because they don't like government taking their money. So, yes, ma'am.
Karen, you know, the federal government, the current administration wanted a census question on citizenship.
Yep.
And they lost at the district court, the federal district court level. And then they appealed, and I haven't kept track of it since then. And are they timing their appeal so that it gets maximum publicity to scare off more people from filling out the census, or where is that case? Is it done?
It's done, and they had to go to print with the census forms and also prepare for the online format. So there will not be a citizenship question on the form. I will say I can't predict that this administration federally won't say anything that would make people additionally nervous about filling it out. But this is why all of us in this room have a role to play in our communities to combat that misinformation.
So kind of in that vein, you said at the very beginning,
yes,
that the U.S. Census then presents the census to the president on 31st December. Who else is in the room?
I haven't looked into that. I don't know the answer to that. Yeah.
Probably will see you on another thing. I'll ask the same
But
question.
you know, depending on how things go in November next year, there may be someone new coming in on January.
But not on the 31st.
That's true. Not on the 31st. It's true. Go ahead.
So, what role can legal enforcers play in this census taking?
Yes. So I would say a few things. One is promoting awareness and about the census, why it's important, and how to fill out the form. So I'm about a week or so of getting some communication support in my role. But the Michigan Nonprofit Association has a ton of resources on their website. So I would encourage you to take a look at that information. And then I'm just a few weeks out from getting some toolkit information prepared as well. So I think that's one. Two is I think, you know, as you're tabling at events, or especially as you get closer closer, if you're still registering for, registering voters as an example, how do you incorporate are you aware the 2020 census is coming up in March of next year? Do you know that? Are you prepared to fill that out? So I think just that kind of community engagement and bringing that up. I think also if there's other, speaking events, there's a lot of folks in the local community that I think would be great people to engage and speak on the census. So I think, helping promote those ideas and, bridging the gap with the local complete count committee too would be a couple of things. Oh, and third, I mentioned one thing you can do today is U.S. Census Bureau is hiring. They're staffing up to over 4,000 people here in Michigan. So they are encouraging folks to apply online. So I think and they're the ones that count, so do the counting. So we need to make sure that they're fully staffed. So. Yes, ma'am.
If these are done by address, do forms go to college dorms, or how does that work?
Well, they will do group dwell. So the question was. Thank you. The question was, for college dorms, do they get a form to their door? And this is another area where the Census Bureau staff will be focusing on working on colleges and universities group dwelling and doing, a Canvas effort as well and connecting them to get to fill out the census.
As well as prisons too.
And prisons, yeah.
Jail, hospital, jail.
Yeah, another place that we're mobilizing with state government. So I don't know what time it is, but
We've got about 5 more minutes, including questions.
okay. Well, we've done a few of those on our way. I just want to, which is good. So I just want to highlight. So our state demographer had put some baseline population information in terms of, this first slide is historic and projected Michigan population. So, so you will see we're growing, which is good news. 10 years ago, we were about 9,800,000 and some. By all estimations, we should be over 10 million next year if we count everyone. 10,027,000. Okay, just over 10 million. So I think that's an important thing, just to recognize where we are. And where the projections are. So the next slide, the Michigan net migrants. This is just to give you a sense of who has been moving into our state and what that path is predicted beyond just 2020. So that's just some background information. The last 2 slides are the 2 maps of the United States, and one piece our self-response rate. So this is what everyone talks about, self-response rates, right? So you respond before the enumerators come out. So in 2010, Michigan had a 78% self-response rate, and that was tied for 5th in the nation. So very good job. Okay, very good job. In 2000, we were at 79% self-response. Okay, 2010, number 1 was Wisconsin at 82%. What's my goal for next year? 82%. Yeah, so I got to move the digits, 4 percentage points, and that maybe will get us into number 1. So just to give you a little bit of context of how other states have performed in that. And then the last is, and my state demographer gets really nervous when I talk about congressional seats, because there's a lot of things that we do not control on that. But the last slide here is potential shifts based on current population. So Texas is predicted to pick up 2 or 3. Now, their state is not putting any resources behind their census. Okay, I'm just reporting. I don't know. Florida, they're probably going to pick up 2 seats. North Carolina is probably going to pick up a seat or 2 congressionally. Right now, North Carolina, they have fewer congressional seats than we do, and they have a bigger population than we do. So I say this all just to be pragmatic. It is likely we will lose a congressional seat. But if we do a really good job getting folks counted in the state and other states do less of a good job, then we're in the fight for maintaining our congressional seats. So I want to be pragmatic, but at the same time, that's part of the challenge, right? And we have been very fortunate with our congressional delegation and the powerful seats that they have held on committees, and it's really an important piece of the puzzle. So, any other questions? I'm getting the hook. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know the margin we'd have to achieve in order to not lose a seat?
It's there's too many variables because it depends on how many people Texas has and Florida, and so. Any other questions? Again, thank you for the. You got one more? Yes.
I just wondering, what other systems on the census do you have?
I haven't seen the official form, but I've only seen what's they tested in Rhode Island, and it's really basic, like 9 or 10 questions: your name, address, race,
Age of children in the household, the relationship between the people in the household, whether or not they're related or unrelated, whether you own or rent your house.
And not where you were born.
There's no long form this year,
The long forms are covered by something entirely different.
American Community Survey.
So there's no long forms for anybody.
Correct.
Wow.
No, that's not true. If you're part of the sandwich of the American Community Survey, then you will get that, but it's not being done at the same time. And it's small number of people are getting it.
Yes, it's the American Community Survey, not the census. So, thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Terry.